All right, and we will start again. So we are Teach the Shoah, and today's program is sharing the stories, voices from the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. And this is our last program dedicated to Yom HaShoah. And we are Teach the Shoah. So for those of you who do not know us, we challenge ignorance and hate by telling testimony-based Holocaust stories. We create personal connections to the stories that we hear, and we also bring in, of course, historical framework. We run different programs. We do storytelling training. We run an amazing program called Les Saper, From Survivor Memory to Living Teller, in which young students interview Holocaust survivors, learn how to build their story, and then go out into the communities as memory keepers, telling the story for as long as they possibly can. We have a storyteller bureau. We dispatch our storytellers out into communities. And we run programs like this one and like our Holocaust commemoration that, if you have missed, will be up on our YouTube, our commemoration from Yom HaShoah last Monday. Every program we run starts with a story. And our first story for today will be told by Cathy, and she will be telling us the story of Tivia Lubatkin. Cathy, I shall spotlight you. And whenever you're ready, please begin.
Sure, I'm unmuted. Eventually, with the help of some Polish partisans, we found a way out of the ghetto through the sewer canals. It took a long time, but eventually we managed to get almost everybody that remained out of the ghetto. These people had already been through so much. They'd been terrorized, starved, humiliated. They'd lost loved ones to disease and deportation. They'd spent weeks hiding to avoid the roundups, and then days running from the flames of a burning ghetto. And now we were asking them to trudge through muck and filth for the slightest chance of survival. And we, the Jewish Fighting Organization, the ZOB, we couldn't even guarantee their safety once they left the sewers. It was a lot to ask of anyone, but especially people who had already suffered so much. And yet they had come to trust us implicitly, not because of promises, but because of actions. The ZOB had become the de facto government of the ghetto. We were replacing the Judenrat with people who would lay down their lives for those in the ghetto rather than collude with the people who wanted to destroy it. Finally, it was my turn to go, along with the other remaining fighters. And the journey took all day. And because of the filth and the stink And the lack of food and water, and just the uncertainty of what we'd find when we finally emerged, it was an absolute hell. And we had a number of injured with us, some of whom didn't survive the trip. Some had been shot, of course, but some had been exposed to poisonous gas. A few of us in my unit had discovered that the Nazis would, when they found a bunker, order everybody out. And then if there was no response, or maybe even if there was, they would gas the bunker. That's what happened at Mila 18, where my unit had been stationed. And those were the people we had with us, the injured. And as you can imagine, not all of them survived. Some succumbed to their injuries during the torturous trip. When we finally did emerge from the sewers, we were outside the ghetto in the countryside. And we made a dash for this line of trees and the safety they provided. And there we were greeted with more Polish partisans. I remember I took this really deep breath and smelled the sweet, fresh air. And it was such a contrast to everything that had gone before. The Nazis had stormed the ghetto repeatedly, rounding up anyone they could get their hands on. And the ZOB had fought them off for weeks. And then one night we woke to find flames and smoke everywhere and utter chaos. The Nazis had surrounded the ghetto and attacked it with flamethrowers and bombed it from above. Tens of thousands died in those fires. And meanwhile, in the Aryan part of the city, life went on as usual. The citizens of the capital walked, played, laughed, enjoyed life. Children laughed while they played in full view of the fires. And those fires burned for days and nights, while girls from nearby villages would come and ride the carousel near the wall and watch the Jews burn. But now we had finally made it out. And you need to understand, as soon as we left the sewers and were in the open air, it wasn't just the stink that we were trying to breathe away. It was also the smell of smoke and soot and ash. So we were finally out of the ghetto, and for the moment, we were safe and among allies. And in that moment, the air smelled like heaven.
Thank you, Cathy, for your beautiful, beautiful telling. Please,
Thank you.
friends, feel free to give your appreciations to Cathy in the chat. She will be more than happy to read them. So, before we delve into the history, I'd like to share with you a few photos of Tivia. A small quote, which ends her book, that tells her full story. And this is a photo of Tivia right after the war, and a photo of Tivia in 1961 giving testimony at the Eichmann trial. Tivia and, at the time, her not yet husband, Yitzhak Antek Zuckerman, still in Poland. Tivia in Kibbutz Yegul, the day she arrived in Israel, before the state of Israel was declared. And here in the first Yegul committee, which discussed the founding of a new kibbutz created with mainly ghetto fighter survivors in Israel, also up north, about 10 to 15 kilometers away from Yegul. And down at the bottom is Tivia, Antek, and friends from the resistance movement, the Eyal movement, in the ghetto fighter kibbutz that was indeed founded in their house a few months before Tivia passed away. So I'm going to take down the slides and I'm going to talk a bit about history, because that's my part in this organization. So, Warsaw Ghetto, one of the largest ghettos in the Reich, was founded in 1940 in a very, very small area in Warsaw. At peak, there were over 460,000 people who were forced into this ghetto. Some were originally from Warsaw, some came from neighboring cities and shtetls, and some escaped other occupied countries, thinking that in the big city in Warsaw it would be safer. Life in the ghetto is very hard, and this program isn't going to delve into ghetto life. We are going to concentrate on the last days of the ghetto, but to understand the last days of the ghetto, I'd like to tell you a small anecdote. In January 1942, to put us in a time and in a place, the Eastern Front has already begun. Places like Vilna, Ukraine, today Ukraine, have already been occupied by the Nazis. Holocaust by bullet has begun. But in Warsaw, life has its own little rhythm. Rumors start coming in to Warsaw, mainly through youth movements, about what is happening in the Eastern territories. And in January 1942, a young girl by the name of Heike Grossman, she's about 22 at this point, is sent from Vilna, from the United Underground, the FBO in Vilna, to different ghettos to tell the different ghetto inhabitants what is happening around Vilna, to tell them about killing pits, to tell them about Punari. And Heike comes to Warsaw, and she meets with her comrades from the Shomer HaTzair, a Zionistic left youth movement. And she tells them that the most miraculous thing has happened in Vilna. Within the chaos, within the sending to killing pits, within the brutality, all youth movements have come together to create a united resistance movement. People look at her, not really understanding what she's saying. She wants some alone time with the head of the Shomer HaTzair in Warsaw, a very young boy by the name of Mordechai Anilevich. And she says to him, what are we to do tomorrow morning? What are we to do to make things move forward? And Anilevich says to him, I think we should all gather together, bring together as many members from different youth movements, and we'll meet in Kirschenbaum's flat. Now, Kirschenbaum was what we call a generalist Zionist. He did not belong to any political party. He was a Zionist at heart, but he didn't want to affiliate with anybody. So supposedly, he was the neutral ground that everybody could go to. And people gather in Kirschenbaum's living room. I'm saying living room, and we're thinking of living rooms we have today. The living room is 2 chairs in a shared apartment with another 5 families. But we're going to call it his living room. And Heike tells everybody what is happening and how amazing it is when you bring all the forces together. And everybody nods their heads. Yes, very nice, very interesting. Yes, yes. There's only one problem. There's one movement that was not invited to his living room, and that is the revisionists. They are excommunicated even in the ghetto. But Heike wants to speak to the revisionists as well, so she goes to meet them. And she tells them. She tells them about Punari, she tells them about the FPO. And the revisionists said, we'll fight with whoever wants to fight with us. And we already know. And they take Heike to see their headquarters. They're prepared. Heike leaves, she goes back to Vilna. But within the ghetto, politics are politics are politics. Because they're not just youth movements. There's a Judenrat, the Jewish Council. They have power. They have a police. There's another group. They're called the Shlosha Sarim, the 13s. They're the mobsters. They're the ones that are in charge of the black market. There's also the rabbinical courts. There's the priest court. There's everything from everything to everything that we can even think of. Now, let's all get all these Jews together into one room and agree on something. Good luck. Let's go back to our presentation. So what actually happens in Warsaw is there's a split. There are 2 different movements that come together. Mordechai Anilevich, we've already met him for a tiny second. He, together with Divya Lubatkin and her future husband, Antek Zuckerman, his full name is Yitzhak, we'll refer to him as Antek, and members from the Bund, members from the Communist Party, people like Mark Edelman, members from Zionist left, Zionist right, the religious movements, they all come together under one leadership, the leadership of Anilevich. For short, the ZOB. On the other hand, we have the revisionists, Pavel Frankel. Frankel himself was the head of the Beitar movement in Warsaw in 1939, pre-war, and when the war breaks out, he actually does not look to be a leader in any way. But in 1941, after the invasion to the east, Frankel understands that there is a need to do more. They both, of course, have flags. So the ZOB uses the blue and white and the Star of David, while the ZZW, the Jewish Military Union, the Beitar movement, uses only the blue and red, the blue and white, kind of resembling the Polish flag of red and white. Now, the Warsaw Ghetto in 1940 is quite large. We have a map here, which is taken from the Yad Vashem Ghetto Encyclopedia, showing us the terrain of the ghetto. Different entrances are marked in blue. But the two interesting things I'd like to show you here is the pink area here, which is the Umschlagplatz. This is the place of deportation. And what is marked here in A and B, which are basically the big factories in Warsaw Ghetto. Why is this important? Because afterwards, during the uprising, these become hubs of activities for the resistance movement. The one marked A, the larger one, is the Schultz factory, and B is the brush factory. The people who worked in the brush factory were actually called the brushers. And every other workshop within the ghetto was named the Schuf. So small factory workers were the Schufers. And for comparison, the ghetto, as deportations begin from the ghetto to the east, euphemism to death camps, the ghetto becomes smaller and smaller. And by the point of the uprising, this is the size of the ghetto. So small. Now, before we go into talking about the actual uprising, I'm going to go back into history. So we know quite a bit about the Warsaw Ghetto because of an interesting group of people led by Emanuel Ringenblum. The group is called Onyx Shabbos, and this is a group that comes together every Saturday night after they have collected evidence from life in the ghetto. Evidence is anything from newspaper clippings, there is underground newspapers, letters, diaries, paintings, sweet wrappers, signposts, Nazi signposts, illegal posters that the underground collects. Emanuel Ringenblum, who was a historian but also a sociologist, finds it extremely important to collect as much as possible. And one of the things that he understands is that people need to be interviewed, especially the ones that come from different places, like our Heike, who comes and actually has information about things that are happening from outside the ghetto. So things are collected, and Ringelblum understands fairly quickly that there are underground movements, other real underground movements that are created. And he wants to go and talk to the leaders. He thinks it's important to understand what they're doing. It also is important to him to see how he and his group of 40 historians can come together and help the resistance. Now, he tries. He finds out who runs both of them and decides to go and have a conversation. He finds that it's a bit difficult to have a conversation with Anilevich. Anilevich does not seem open to share plans, thoughts, members. Ringelblum does figure out that at this point in January of 1942, there are at least 300 members working together in the Eyal underground movement. And he's very surprised that Pavel Frankel is more than happy to meet with him. Not only is he happy to meet with him, he takes him to the command bunker. And Ringelblum afterwards writes in his diary that he is amazed. This is like walking into a military base. Everybody is armed top to bottom. The walls in their bunker are lined with machine guns, with pistols, with anything anybody could ever think of to start a real uprising. And he starts questioning Frankel and he says, where did all this come from? And Frankel's very honest. We work with Armia Krajowa. We work with the Polish underground. We buy arms. We sell whatever we can. We collect whatever we can, people's gold, their last piece of fur, anything to exchange for guns. And Ringelblum tries to understand again, why is there no cooperation? Why are people not coming together? I actually think that till the end of Ringelblum's life, he did not come up with an answer. We still don't have an answer 80 years later. There is no cooperation, but there are meetings. Frankel and Anielewicz do meet. There's a bit of coordination, not a lot of it. The Great Deportation begins on Tisha B'Av 1942. As I said earlier, the peak of population in Warsaw Ghetto was 460,000. For 10 days beginning Tisha B'Av 1942, 40,000 people were sent to Treblinka. Now, there's a lot of deception. The Nazis don't say, we're sending Jews to Treblinka. And even if they did say at this point, who knows what Treblinka is? It's a little village in Eck-Welt with no Jews in it, by the way. But one person escapes the train that arrives in Treblinka, makes his way back to Warsaw. He's a revisionist. He's part of the Beitar movement. And he goes to talk to whoever he can to say, this is what is happening. When they are saying that we are sending the people who can't work to places that are more suitable for them in the East, they're being sent to their death. The reaction of the Jewish Council and the reaction of most of the prominent Jews in the ghetto is, you stop talking nonsense. You stop using your hot-blooded, big-headed revisionist propaganda. Nobody sends anybody to die in a place called Treblinka. Everybody except for the actual revisionists. Pavel Frankel already knows about Treblinka. He's heard about this because some of the train drivers are still connected to Armia Krajowa. And they tell that they come with a train to a certain spot right outside Treblinka, and then they're told to leave the train. And Nazis come in and take the train on a separate track that goes somewhere where there's a lot of smoke that comes out from a chimney. Doesn't take a lot to put two and two together. So Frankel says the next time there's going to be a big deportation, that's when we need to act. And at some point, the kids, they're not kids, they're in their 20s, but the kids in the ghetto, also the second underground, also Anielewicz, they take this seriously. And everybody's very frustrated because the older people in the ghetto, the prominent people in the ghetto, are saying that this is nonsense, but we know it's not, and we know we need to fight back. Tusia Altman, she's a courier girl. She leaves Warsaw. She goes to Białystok, and she also goes to Vilna. In Vilna, not only did they come together, there's a pamphlet that Abba Kovna wrote. That pamphlet had power, apparently, because people there in Vilna, they came together to fight. One of the things that stuck with her is, We shall not go like lamb to the slaughter. And she comes back to Warsaw and she tells everybody. So there is a joint decision, a joint thought. Anilevich and Frankel, they write their own pamphlets. And they go out and they give out these pamphlets in Polish, in Yiddish, in Hebrew. We shall not go like lamb to the slaughter, both pamphlets say. Each one has a tiny bit of a different tone representing their political stance. But the message is the same message. We will not go as lamb to the slaughter. January 1943. There's rumors that there might be a deportation, but nobody can tell for sure. But then it happens on the 18th of January. The Nazis march in, screaming and shouting, gathering people at the Umschlagplatz, not necessarily because all of these people will be going. It's because that's where they're going to start picking who's going to go. At this point, Anilevich and his crew, they managed to rally up a gun. A gun. Anilevich and 4 other members of his group completely lose their mind. They're like, this is not happening. We're going to do something. And they put themselves in line walking towards the Umschlagplatz. And they start a racket. And they think this will do something. It doesn't. They get beaten to a pulp. And somehow, miraculously, the mobs, and they're not really a mob, it's just hundreds and hundreds of people coming from different sides, manage to somehow separate Anilevich leading away and everybody else, and they get to escape. Afterwards, this was known as the small uprising. Well, it was small. They didn't achieve much, but there was a racket. There are more rumors. There are rumors that something big is going to happen, and it's going to happen probably on a holiday again. The Nazis seem to like this. The rumors are that this is probably going to happen towards Passover. Both underground movements start preparing. They start mapping out where are going to be the best posts. Where can you throw a Molotov cocktail from? What window is the best window to stand on? Which rooftop? The ghetto is small. I showed you on the map, but it's much smaller. But we still have factories. We still have the shufs, and we still have the brushers. Now, we know that up to now, the Nazis never went into the factories. Those are useful for Nazi economy. Where's the best place to put some of your fighters? In the factories. At this point, they don't know what the real plans are. They obviously think that this is going to be another deportation like the one in January and the one in July beforehand. It's going to be bad, but nobody thought that the ghetto was going to be completely eliminated. So they dispatch. Anilevich has 22 units spread through the ghetto, and Frankel has another 12 units. You see, Beitar only has their own movement, so they have less people, but they have more guns. So they take Muranovska Square, one of the entrances. That is going to be their main post. And indeed, the evening of Passover, 1943, the 19th of April, the Nazis march in. Now, they're not expecting anybody to do anything because, the worst that happened were the 5 kids who had a bit of a racket. Before that, we had people like Janusz Korczak and Stefa Wiluczenska taking 200 children in their Sunday bests, walking quietly towards the train. Nobody said anything. Maybe somebody cried and begged not to be separated from their wife or from a son, but there were no real resistance. This isn't the Osterjuden who are wild. still Warsaw. And as they walk in, the Molotov cocktails start and the machine gun on the top of Marinovska Square start shooting. And they're falling, the Nazis. They're shot, they're wounded, they're dead. They start retreating to get more people to bring in their tanks. But the next thing that happens is a young boy and a young girl climb up a building on Marinovska Square. And they do one small act of resistance, and that is waving two flags. The blue and white flag and the red and white flag. We can't see this. This is a clandestine photo. It's not from the Stroop report. So it's really hard to see, but where this big black arrow is, that is where the flags were waving. For 3 days, these flags were waving. And this annoyed the Nazis in ways that we cannot imagine. At this point, Antek Zuckerman, Sylvia's partner, has already crossed over to the Aryan side. He has false papers. He actually looks a bit Aryan. And his job is to document everything and report back to the government in exile, the Polish government in exile in London, but also to whoever he can within the Shomer Tzair network. He sends clandestine telegrams. He sends radio signals. He sends reports. And every day when he sees the Nazis getting more and more annoyed by the flags, he reports back about this. This becomes a big thing. To the extent, talking a bit about memory for a minute, that to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising was celebrated by stamps of two flags on the top of Marinovska Square. The biggest play in Poland about the uprising was called Flags Over the Ghetto. It had a lasting effect. After 3 days, of course, the building itself was bombarded with shells from tanks, and the two kids had to come down. The girl, unfortunately, did not survive. The boy returned to his unit, and his own story is a story that I may tell you all one day, but it is too long and too complicated for this evening. And talking of stories, our next story will be told by Violet. She will tell us the story of Fela Finkelstein. And Violet, I'm going to spotlight you. Unmute yourself whenever you are ready.
I was born in Poland, Warsaw, Poland. I was a very proud Polish Jew. Our home was traditional Jewish. My friends were Jewish, but I also had friends outside the community. Now, my oldest brother became a member and very active member of different organizations, youth organizations. We were taught pioneering skills. We were taught to help one another, and that this was a key to life, no matter where we lived it. Our groups were very tight. We worked very close together. We met almost every day. And so when the Nazis marched into Prague, we watched. And then when they came and took Warsaw, we knew. They put us into the ghetto. We became prisoners of the ghetto. But we would meet of an evening, these youth groups. And we would talk about, what do we do now? You see, we have been friends and companions and comrades since we were very young. And here we were in our early 20s. We had all this background. We had all this knowledge. We wanted to know, what do we do now? So we began to make plans. We were a part of the ZZW, which was the Jewish Military Union. And so we knew that everything we were building up to was to resist the Nazis. I was chosen as a liaison runner. So when it was dark, I would go to the brick wall. And there would be a section of the brick wall that people on the other side would push weapons through. And it was my job to push money back to them. Now, they were the Polish resistance, but they were helping us for money, of course, but they were helping us. We got a very large amount of guns, ammunition, different things that were very important to prepare, because we were not going to go like lambs to the slaughter. That's a fallacy. We had been taught who we were, and we were not going to be just forgotten. Now, another thing that we would do is, because there were factories in the ghetto, we would go into these factories and we would talk to the people. And we'd always been taught in our youth groups to be encouraging and supportive. So we would tell them, don't fall, don't fall. Be of good courage. And when you see the SS, don't cry. Don't cry. We're together. We will work together. The youth organizations had played such a crucial role in our lives. It helped us build to be strong character, and as strong of body as we possibly could be. The time came, and we were ready. We fought back.
Thank you, Violet, for that fantastic telling. Please, everyone, give your appreciations to Violet in the chat. So let's go back to our slides. And this is Fela. So here we have Fela with her friends from the Beitar movement. This is in 1938. Oh, sorry. This is in 1938. And you can see the Beitar movements had uniforms that almost looked military at the time. And this is Fela post-war, already in Israel. And the last photo here is in 1990, just after the Iron Curtain was taken down, in Auschwitz, lighting one of the 6 torches of memory. The fighters of both underground movements fought bravely for 28 days and nights. But not only them, 60,000 members of the Warsaw Ghetto, whether hiding in their different malinas underground, whether hiding in walls, in pianos, behind credenzas, whether trying to escape through the sewers, everybody showed resistance. 28 days, the longest lasting ghetto uprising during the Holocaust. The Nazis at some point give up on trying to actually fight, and they end up burning building by building, smoking out people, and at times burning people. They gathered almost 50,000 people, sending them off to Auschwitz, to Majdanek, to Treblinka, to Sobibor. But what happens to the main characters that we were talking about? Mordechai Anilevich and 4 more members of his underground end up in a big bunker in Mila Street, number 18. The building is burned, but they refuse to go out with the smoke. They die in that bunker. Tivia Lubatkin takes many, many people out from the ghetto, not just fighters from her units, but also other people, whoever she could, taking them out through the sewers into the Aryan side. They were the few last ones who left the ghetto. Tivia herself had false papers together with Antek. They remain in Warsaw. And when the Warsaw uprising begins in 1944, they join the fighting there as well. Pavel Frankel and 60 members of his revisionist movement. Halfway through the uprising, this was planned in advance, when they realized that there was no way to actually win this battle with the Nazis. The ghetto is already half burnt. They leave behind the people who decide to remain there fighting, and they decide to take their fight together with Armia Krajowa and other partisan movements and to go into the forests in different places to fight. They have to cross different cities to do this. They're helped by different members of Armia Krajowa and other righteous people. But unfortunately, less than 3 weeks after leaving the ghetto, all 60 members are caught and shot by the Nazis. None survived. Other members of the Beitar movement remain and do survive. They too join the fighting afterwards, the Polish fighting in Warsaw. Some, like the boy who wove the flag, do get caught. He specifically was sent to Auschwitz and survived. Let us go back. So this drawing here was from the Beitar movement newsletter, old school newsletter, that was printed in the ghetto. And the editor, who called himself editor, we don't know his name, ended the last issue of their newsletter with the words, "One day, the Star of David. One day, it will be a badge of honor for the new resurrected Jew, a golden Star of David." Cantor Karen Webber will recite a poem she wrote specifically for today, Warsaw Ghetto Girls. Karen, let me spotlight you.
Thank you. Ringelblum calls us the Ghetto Girls, a selective web of women ages 16 to 25 who speak a variety of tongues. Blondes can pass for Christians. We're the ones who jump from moving trains in a single bound, roll blueprints under a headband, slip small revolvers inside the stomach cavity of a teddy, fold false papers into my pumps, strap grenades to the knickers, or mix them in a bag of potatoes. If you kill the messenger, another will come in her place. Let us name a few. Tivia, who shepherded her fighters through the sewer to safety like a modern-day Moses. Tzvia. Fruma, who smuggled guns between Jewish communities. Fruma. Niuta, who may seem like a little girl in braids, but is really an assassin, ready to kill you. Niuta. Tema, who cut, pasted, rearranged documents to bring to his door. Tema. Maha, who lobbed Molotov cocktails from the roof. Maha. Do they get a memorial stone, a plaque, maybe a posthumous prize? Say their names with me. Tzvia, Fruma, Niuta, Tema, Maha. It's Saturday night once again, friends. Let's have our own egg. So ghetto girls, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon?
Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful. So before we step into our Q&A, let me just bring up one more slide, because this was a historical program. So all the photos we've seen here today were from Yad Vashem Archive, Ghetto Fighter Museum Archive, and the Jabotinsky House Archive.